Okay, this is my second attempt at making this recording. I made one that was 39 minutes long, and when it eventually processed, I discovered there was no audio. So this is take number 2. I'm going to try and do it in 25 minutes. So this is a presentation for all our existing supervisors as well as the new supervisors who are joining us this year. This year we have made one major substantial change and a couple of smaller interesting changes to the whole final placement assessment process. The aim of the changes we've made is to try and remove as much as possible the theatrical performance that a lot of students still insist on attempting to do, as well as trying to stop students only looking after a very small number of patients, the same patients, day in, day out for 5 months. So, one of the new changes is that we've added Gozo General Hospital to our list of final examination locations, the usual 4. Plus this year we have 1 student in the coronary care unit in the Gozo General Hospital, and in the summer period we'll have another student who's been given an exemption from doing it right now in the female general ward. So if anyone is interested in supervising in Gozo, you're absolutely welcome. I think it will include, I need to check for sure, but I believe it includes also 1 night stay in a hotel the day before, obviously, because the supervision starts at 7 a.m. But if anyone expresses interest in doing this, I'll get more details and find out. Okay, just a reminder, the purpose of the supervision process is to provide an additional formative feedback, so additional to the mentor's feedback, and the student is also going to be getting 3 supervisions from the supervisor, who is someone external to the ward in which they're placed. But essentially, the purpose of the supervision and the final assessment is to ensure the students are competent in all 6 of the domains of professional practice. Students are responsible for organizing their working time. They are not responsible for organizing their supervision sessions. That is a mistake. I need to delete that. They have absolutely no say in the supervision sessions this time round. They obviously need to demonstrate knowledge throughout the placement. They need to be reflecting on their practice, and they need to be documenting the feedback they're obtaining from their mentor and their supervisor, and obviously acting upon it. So the biggest major change we're doing, the absolute major change we're going to be doing, is the 3 supervision sessions between March and May will be unannounced. That means the student will not know when you will be turning up to do the supervision session. Now this happens in other faculties, particularly Faculty of Education, so it's no big deal. We suspect it's going to have a major impact on the way students are going to be practicing on a daily basis now. Because they don't know when the supervisor is going to turn up, they have to literally work with 1 nurse and manage, take some of the nurse's patients and look after them and collaborate with 1 single nurse. So for goodness sake, if you're going to inform the students when you're coming, you're going to screw up the whole system and you will ruin the whole concept of it, and obviously I will get to know because other students will feel that that's really not fair, and I won't ask you to supervise again because, you know, at the end of the day that's totally undermining the whole system. So do not give any indication to anyone, not even the charge nurses or the mentors, when you're going to be turning up. Of course, some students are pretty smart. They'll probably figure out your roster. Of course, what they don't know is you might decide to take a day of leave to come and do the supervision. So feel free to tell them that. So that kind of, tell them, don't waste your time trying to figure out when I'm coming. I'd rather you focus on what you're doing on a daily basis. The supervision sessions will essentially remain the same. You start at 7 o'clock. They need to stop to write reports at 11:30. You need to get a half-hour break somewhere before that. At 12 o'clock, stop and ask them questions, and then provide them feedback. And the feedback, if it takes you till 3 p.m. giving them feedback, so be it. And you document, keep track of the time, so that then when we come for payment, you write the time you basically finish the supervision. Okay? So, and the supervision, the feedback at the end of the supervision is probably the most important part of the whole process. Because if the student doesn't understand what precisely they've done well and why on that session, what they didn't do terribly well, and what they were an absolute disaster at, or absent care, if they don't understand that, how on earth are they going to improve from supervision 1 to supervision 2, etc.? Supervision 2 and 3, you need to fill in the feedback form, the supervision report, which is attached. Okay? For supervision 1, use the feedback form to guide what you're telling them. Okay? It's not acceptable to say, you were good today, and that's it, and walk out. No, you need to take every single statement and explain to them, today, this was very good, or today, this was poor, or this I didn't see at all morning. Okay? So this is crucial. The supervisor needs to seek input from the mentor and give mentor a copy of their performance. Ideally, you ring up and speak to them. If the mentor is on duty on the day you're doing supervisions, please ask them to come and sit in and listen to your feedback, right? Because if they can hear directly from you, it's the best, absolute best. Explain to them that they need to sit and listen. They are there as observers, unless you actually ask them questions. If there is an issue that they don't necessarily agree with you, you can talk about it later on yourselves without the student being around, okay? And of course, we expect the utmost professionalism on everyone, okay? So no slagging off wards or being rude about different people's systems, okay? What we recommend is that the supervisor ticks all the performance indicators. And remember, it's better to be harder than lenient at this stage. Because if you're a little bit harder and their performance doesn't look brilliant, they're more likely to work harder and work towards being brilliant. Okay? And write generic comments at the overall comments at the end. So whilst the student is writing up their reports, you can be ticking most of the performance indicators and writing your general overall comments. But then what we suggest is, as you are giving students detailed feedback on their performance, make the student write down their own notes, about your feedback. Then they can take, when it's all finished, they can take a photocopy, or they can take a photo with their camera so that they have a copy instantly. And you take the original and keep it. And we will ask for those supervision reports just before the exams, okay? So in the beginning of June, we'll ask you to submit the supervision reports. So we have them filed before the exams commence, so they're with us in the exam boards during the exams, okay? It's absolutely imperative that you communicate with the mentor. The mentor is a fundamental part of this whole process. If you don't communicate what you were happy with, what your student was doing, and what you weren't happy with, then how can the mentor work with the student to work on those weaknesses? They need to know. Communication is absolutely imperative. And to be honest, if any supervisor persists with not giving feedback to the mentor, as in talking, not just sending a copy of the paper, so you can do it on the phone, okay, or you can do it face-to-face, then in future I won't be asking you to continue to be supervisors, because this is an integral part of the whole process. So this is Stuart's holistic assessment of competence, and I'm sticking this up for all the supervisors just to reiterate to you that it's not just about the technical skills and a little bit of knowledge. In the supervision sessions, you need to be gathering data on all these aspects and, more importantly, giving feedback to the student on all these aspects. What was their attitude and their professional behavior like? Were they practicing in an ethical manner? Did they genuinely show good applied knowledge and show understanding of that knowledge? Were they using evidence-based practice in their work? To what degree were they problem-solving in decision-making? Were there situations they could have taken more decisions or been more proactive in the decision-making aspect? Get them to reflect on their practice, if anything, to reflect on their performance compared to the last time, or their performance now compared to the month of February, the first when they were on their own. Okay? So please, for goodness sake, do not focus merely on technical skills. That is only a small part of the whole process. The other part you need to gather data on and provide feedback on is the 6 domains of competence. These are essentially the areas we're assessing the students on in that final exam. So it's really important that you're giving them feedback on each of these domains from what you've observed that morning. Okay? Where would we like the emphasis to be this year? This year we would like you to continue emphasizing active decision-making and problem-solving, but we're going to add applied knowledge. What does this mean? A student who regurgitates a whole bunch of stuff. Oh, I'm just seeing a spelling mistake, sorry. Applied. A student who's regurgitating a whole bunch of pre-programmed information, and then when the examiners ask simple questions, so they might babble on and on about asthma or COPD and all this stuff, but then you say, okay, so why is Mr. Joe Borge on a 35% oxygen mask, and the student cannot answer it, then the student will not be deemed to not have knowledge. So the examiners this year will be asking questions specifically at nursing care or nursing related issues of their patients. Okay, or for example, in an elderly setting, SVPR, that you have a 78-year-old very independent lady with shoes that are 2 sizes too big, walking down the corridor. You turn to the student, you say, so what is that lady who's walking down to get her lunch most at risk of having to her right now? Watch her. What is a potential problem / disaster about to happen? And if the student says, well, her shoes aren't fitted well, great, well done. So what do you need to be doing as a student? What can you do to prevent that lady from falling and breaking her leg and ending up potentially bedridden? Inform the relatives, get better shoes, you know? So that is applied knowledge, okay? And that we need to emphasize. Effective teaching is another issue we need to emphasize. The students are just rattling off stuff and throwing information at their students or their patients, and that's not effective teaching. Incidentally, I will be organizing 3 voluntary sessions with all the third-year students about problem-solving decision-making vis-a-vis the nursing process, assessing, planning, implementing, and evaluating. I will also be explaining to them about what we mean by applied knowledge and effective teaching / discharge / promotion of healthy lifestyles. Okay. The emphasis needs to be on students being proactive in their learning. And a student who's proactive in their learning and understanding the feedback from Supervision 1 and working on it, and you see the improvement, that needs to be praised a lot, okay? But ultimately, students need to be proactive in their care. Doing the obvious technical skills that need to be done is not enough to pass. If they're just doing the technical skills, the washings, the changing of dressing, they're functioning to the level of a glorified care worker. They need to show problem solving, good communication, they need to be able to take decisions on the spur of the moment. Okay. Those students who are in either long-term settings, such as SVPR or Karen Gregg, or Mater Day or SAMOC with long-term, well, what we call social cases, it's really important that if they are going to take, especially in Mater Day, the social cases, which I strongly advise they don't, okay, it's absolutely imperative that they treat individuals in SVPR as residents. They are residents, they are not patients. In Karen Gregg, if they are long-term patients, they're residents, okay? If they're there for rehab and there's a plan for them to be discharged, they're patients. So what's important is that the students working in Karen Gregg and SVPR work with all the different patients in the ward. So don't be shy after supervision 1 and supervision 2 to walk up and down the corridor and at the end of the supervision and say, okay, tell me about these patients in here. Which ones of these have you looked after in these last 4 weeks? And tell me about them. And put them under the pressure that you as a supervisor want to know that they know all the patients in this ward. Okay? The other thing everyone needs to be very vigilant about is make sure you are not having the same patients for the supervisions, unless they end up with a few patients, because if they take the patients of one nurse, chances are they might have looked after some of the patients. Okay, so that's obvious. In Karen Gregg and SVPR, students need to be mindful of concepts such as boredom, isolation, sensory deprivation, touch or the lack of it, active engagement to keep their minds busy. Okay. It's in SVPR, it's their home. That's their home. It's not a hospital, it's a home. Things like playing games, listening to music, generally sitting and talking to the patients and really getting to know them. So the supervisors in SVPR and the long-term patients of Karen Gregg, don't be shy to ask them, who comes to visit them? Who have you seen come to visit this person? What does this person do when they were younger? Did they work? What was their job? What did they do? How many children do they have? How many are still alive? How many have died? How many live in Australia or abroad? Okay? What do their children do? So you're trying to find out how much your student has really engaged with their residents and patients. The other thing in long-term settings, supervisors need to be vigilant, is this concept of teaching. For goodness sake, teaching an elderly person how to give themselves insulin when the nurses are doing it always for the patient is a redundant teaching process. Or explaining to a patient what they should be eating when A, they are not cooking the food, and B, they're not even getting their own food. It is being put on a plate and put in front of them, is redundant and useless and backfires. So if you see redundant teaching taking place, please make them aware of this, okay? Because it just backfires really badly, okay? There's tons to teach. They can teach students. They can have amazing conversations. In elderly and residential settings, sitting down and spending time talking to the patients and the residents is desirable, okay? So just keep that in mind. So this is a slide students were given. They were all told in January that they need to create a schedule of how they plan to work. And this schedule they had to submit to Kathleen. They've also been told they must give a schedule to their mentor, their charge nurse, and of course their supervisor. So how is this unannounced supervision system going to take place? Well, first of all, the rule of them sending an email by no later than 8 a.m. of the day that they're sick still holds water. If they're unable to attend, they need to submit an email. So we have a written evidence. But now they're going to have to also send a text to their supervisor by no later than 6 a.m. Now, most people are happy to give their student their mobile number. If you absolutely don't want to give your mobile number, that's fine. Give an email, but for goodness sake, you need to check that email frequently, particularly the day if you plan to do supervision. So you really do need to keep in mind that you might plan to do it on a day and the student might cancel for you, right? So you'll have to reschedule, which is why it's important not to leave it right up till the 20th of May to do that last supervision. If, on the other hand, you turn up to the ward and the student hasn't notified you that they were not able to attend, then that is a missed supervision session and they have missed, it's their loss. Okay? Now, if your student is constantly messaging that they're not going or they're changing, I'm not going tomorrow, but I'm going the day after, all of this, if you're getting lots of cancellations, you need to alert Kathleen sooner than later. Chances are the student is absolutely mucking around and we need to nip it in the bud immediately. Okay? So this is really quite important. These are the key important dates. Essentially, beginning of February, the third year students started their placement. So they've all been there for 4 weeks so far. On Monday and Tuesday, the first year degree on Monday and diploma on Tuesday will start their mentored placements with their final year students. So the first year students have been in observation placements in pediatrics, maternity and community health centres. And so for them, next week's going to be quite a high stressed moment. Easter recess is between the 26th March and the 8th of April. Try, please, as much as possible to get the first supervision in before the 26th of March, second supervision in before the end of April, and the third supervision. Get that first supervision in as quick as possible. They've had a lot of practice now. It's more important you get a quick baseline of their performance. Now, if you are going to be away in March or in April for a long-ish period, and when you see their schedule, it's very hard to fit in a session, then you may ask them to come in and do 1 week in the Easter recess. And ideally, they work the days their mentor is on duty. And they may or may not have their junior student with them because we cannot oblige the first year students to come in the Easter recess. Okay? So if as a supervisor you are inconvenient, you're basically on long leave, then we can sort of adjust. The 20th of May is the absolute last day any supervision can take place. There are no supervisions in the month of June. Between the 21st of May and the 3rd of June, they have liberal studies, a few days of no lectures and no placements, and then the examinations will start almost immediately. 4th of June, all the nursing students, first years, second years and third years, will start back into their summer placement. Obviously, all the first year students swap around. Who was in a chronic long-term setting will go into acute, who was in acute will go into chronic, roughly. We will hold the final clinical exams this year between the 18th of June and the 3rd of July. However, students will need to be available for examination until the 20th of July. Why? Well, another change we've agreed on is that the supervisor must be present for the exam. We feel it is very unfair on those students who had 2 external examiners and not their supervisor last year. And so we have decided that last year we had 3 supervisors who were genuinely sick or post-op and they couldn't examine. So in that case, the exam will be cancelled and deferred to a date when the supervisor is available. If the supervisor is absolutely unavailable to be examining by the 20th of July, the exam will be held with 2 externals, but the supervisor will be involved in the examination board via Skype to explain and give their their views on how the supervision proceeded, okay? And I think this is a really nice and fair change that we're ensuring a lot more consistency amongst the students. I think this is a good thing. So, are you essentially able to be a supervisor with us this year? In other words, are you available during that 2-week examination period, 18th of June to the 3rd of July? If you're on long leave for that period, then I'm sorry, this year you can't be a supervisor. If you are able to be a supervisor and you're available for that examination period, how many students can you supervise this year? 1 or 2? We're trying to give no more than 2. And I would like to know which location you can supervise in. And please, I need people to be a little bit creative. Obviously, SVPR people, Karen Gregg people, I will try and put you in your own locations, obviously not different wards, but we do have more students than we have supervisors, so I will need different people to be available to go to different places, okay? If you're willing to supervise in Gozo, please stick that in as well, okay? And you need to send me an email to my university email as soon as possible. I am aiming to give the list to the students by today week. So I really need everyone to give me a reply in the next 3, max 4 days time. So I trust that this presentation has explained how we're executing the supervision and the assessment this year. It's essentially the same. Some things are going to be somewhat different. I think the unannounced supervisions is key to major changes. So please, we really look forward to hearing your feedback after the exams on how you feel, how effective you feel these supervisions were. I think initially students might be under stress, but then I think once we start with the first or second, I think it'll be pretty, I think they'll be okay with it, quite frankly. My wish was to have the exam unannounced, but we agreed as a group, and I respect that as a department, that now is not the time to do that unannounced. We want to see how the supervisions go, and then we will make changes for the year after according to the feedback we receive. So, if you're interested, kindly send me an email as soon as possible and let me know if you're available, how many students you can supervise, and which hospitals you're willing to supervise in. Thank you very much, and I look forward to getting this list all sorted out very soon. Thank you.